beyond the image game, building authentic communities through love. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt that subtle pressure to perform, that nagging voice whispering you need to be someone else, someone more polished, more impressive, more whatever the room seems to demand? We've created a culture where authenticity feels like a luxury we can't afford, where genuine connection has been replaced by strategic networking, where love, real unconditional love, has been pushed aside for transactions and status games. I recently had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Quashanda Washington, a visionary leader who's not just challenging these dynamics in professional spaces, she's revolutionizing them. Her work has ignited a movement across communities that were previously trapped in cycles of competition and performance. What makes Kwashanda remarkable isn't just her insight, but her courage to speak truth in spaces where conformity is the safer choice. She has become a beacon for thousands who yearn for more authentic connection in their professional lives, particularly within Black professional communities where the pressure to perform can be even more intense. What struck me most about Kwashanda's perspective was her unwavering belief that genuine love, not just professional courtesy, belongs at the center of our communities. Her work has sparked a movement of professionals who are tired of performing and ready to transform how we build relationships, especially within Black professional spaces. The question that emerged from our conversation was deceptively simple but revolutionary. What happens when we stop competing and start connecting? Let's be honest, we've all been there. The networking event where everyone's scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. The professional group where you feel you need to hide your struggles and amplify your successes. The constant calculation of who's who and where you stand in the invisible hierarchy. It's exhausting. And according to the leaders I've interviewed, it's also completely counterproductive. Consider the Black Executive Men Community, or BEM. This organization didn't emerge from a marketing strategy or business plan. It was born from necessity because talented Black professionals were hitting invisible ceilings, not because they lacked skills or ambition, but because they lacked access to networks that understood their cultural context. What makes BM remarkable isn't just that they connect elite Black professionals through executive roundtables and mentorship programs, it's how they do it. They've created intentional spaces where vulnerability isn't just permitted, it's encouraged alongside ambition. One member described his first BIM roundtable experience with such raw honesty that it stayed with me for weeks afterward. I walked in prepared to impress everyone with my resume, he said. I had my elevator pitch polished, my accomplishments memorized, my business cards at the ready. He paused, then continued, and none of it mattered. Because for the first time in my professional life, someone asked me not what I'd achieved, but what I was struggling with. That simple question, what are you struggling with, changed everything. I walked out having shared challenges I'd never voiced before, and with five new allies who had my back, not because of what I could do for them, but because we recognize our shared humanity. This is what happens when we create spaces where authenticity trumps image. People advance faster because they're not wasting energy on pretense. They build relationships based on trust rather than utility. And perhaps most importantly, they discover that their struggles aren't unique, they're shared. But here's where it gets interesting. The most successful communities aren't just places where people can be authentic, they're places where people are intentionally lifting each other up. Take the story of the 100 Black men of Syracuse and their participation in the leadership classroom program. Despite decades of community service, board members initially felt skeptical about investing time in leadership development. They were busy doing the work, mentoring youth, addressing economic development, tackling health issues. Who had time for workshops? But something remarkable happened when they joined TLC's monthly sessions. As one participant put it, we walked in as individual warriors, each fighting our own battles. We walked out as a unified force aligned in purpose and strategy. These leaders who had been working in relative isolation suddenly found themselves in conversation with other community organizers facing similar challenges. They shared resources instead of competing for them. They formed collaborations that continue saving lives today. One leader described a breakthrough moment. We'd been struggling to launch a health initiative in our neighborhood for years. The funding wasn't there, the partnerships weren't solid. During one TLC session, I mentioned this challenge casually. By the end of the day, three other organizations had offered resources, not because they wanted credit, but because they genuinely cared about the outcome. What began as professional development evolved into something much more profound, a network where love based leadership is modeled at every level. This is the power of intentional community building. It transforms not just individual careers, but entire ecosystems. But let's get practical for a moment. How do we actually create these spaces? How do we move from competition to collaboration in a world that seems designed to pit us against each other? Quashanda Washington's insights, along with research from Intellectual Inc., point to a three-part approach that any of us can implement regardless of where we stand professionally. First, seek out culturally affirming spaces. For Black professionals, this might mean organizations like the National Black MBA Association or industry specific groups centered on Black excellence. These aren't just networking opportunities, they're oxygen. They're places where you don't have to explain your existence or justify your presence. A marketing executive described finding her professional home in a Black women's leadership collective. I didn't realize how much energy I was spending code switching until I didn't have to anymore. Suddenly, I had all this creative capacity that had been tied up in performance. Second, show up fully as yourself. This is harder than it sounds. We've been conditioned to present curated versions of ourselves, highlighting strengths, hiding vulnerabilities, performing confidence even when we're uncertain. But as one leader put it, you don't have to dilute yourself. Authenticity builds trust. When you share both victories and struggles, you create permission for others to do the same. You transform the culture one honest conversation at a time. A tech entrepreneur described her journey. I spent the first decade of my career hiding my background. The fact that I grew up in public housing, that I was the first in my family to graduate high school. I thought those facts would diminish me in others' eyes. She paused. When I finally started sharing my full story, something unexpected happened. People didn't respect me less, they trusted me more. And that trust translated into partnerships that have defined my success. Third, and this is where the real magic happens, commit to mentoring others while remaining open to guidance yourself. This bidirectional flow of wisdom is what distinguishes transactional networking from transformative community building. I'm reminded of a story from the BAM community. A senior executive joined initially seeking peers at his level. What he found instead was a group of men at various career stages, all committed to each other's success. He began mentoring younger members, only to discover they were teaching him just as much about emerging technologies and cultural shifts. I thought I was there to give, he reflected. I didn't realize how much I needed to receive. This is the essence of what Quashanda Washington describes as lifting as we climb, the understanding that our individual success is inextricably linked to collective advancement. But let's acknowledge something important. This approach requires courage. It means rejecting the scarcity mindset that tells us there's only room for a few of us at the top. It means believing that your success doesn't diminish mine, it enhances it. This isn't just idealism, it's strategy. When we build communities rooted in authentic connection rather than competition, we create resilient networks that withstand economic fluctuations and industry disruptions. The leaders who participated in Syracuse's TLC program discovered this firsthand. By forming cross organizational relationships, they created safety nets that caught them when individual organizations faced funding cuts or leadership transitions. Their collaborative approach rippled outward, creating a broader network where resources flow according to need rather than status. This is what happens when we lead with love instead of fear. We create abundance where there appeared to be scarcity. Now I can almost hear the skeptics. This sounds nice in theory, but the real world doesn't work this way. The real world rewards sharp elbows and self promotion. To which I would respond, are we describing reality or are we creating it? The communities I've described aren't theoretical constructs. They're real spaces where real transformation is happening. They're proving that another way is possible, not just more humane, but more effective. So I challenge you today, look at your professional relationships. Are they transactional or transformational? Are you performing or connecting? Are you competing or collaborating? Choose one relationship where you've been guarded. Reach out with authenticity instead. Share a struggle, offer support without expectation of return. See what happens when you lead with love instead of fear, because here's the truth that Quashanda Washington's work reveals. The future belongs to those who can build authentic communities, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the smart thing to do. In a world of artificial intelligence and automation, our uniquely human capacity for empathy and connection becomes our greatest competitive advantage. The revolution we need won't be won through better performance or sharper image management. It will be won through the courage to be real, the wisdom to lift others, and the faith that when we lead with love, we create possibilities that competition could never imagine. This isn't just about better networking, it's about better living. It's about creating a world where we don't have to choose between success and authenticity, where one becomes the path to the other. The choice is yours. Will you continue playing the image game, or will you join the growing movement of leaders who are building a new kind of professional culture, one authentic connection at a time? The world doesn't just need your talents and skills, it needs your truth, it needs your voice, it needs your love. And when you offer these gifts freely, you won't just change your career trajectory, you'll change lives, you'll change communities, and together we'll change the world.